1. Blonde hair and blue eyes. Aryans, first off. Let's kill the biggest meme out there, that you had to be a blonde, blue-eyed Viking to be Aryan. Look at the Nazi leadership. Hitler, Goebbels, Himmler. Not exactly a group of Swedish surfers, right? While you see those features everywhere in Nazi propaganda posters, they were never a legal requirement for citizenship. The 1935 Nuremberg Laws were cold and bureaucratic. They defined Aryan status strictly by ancestry, meaning you needed 4 German grandparents, not a specific eye color. In fact, if the Nazis had actually purged everyone without blonde hair, they would have wiped out most of their own leadership and millions of brown-haired Germans who lived as full citizens without any fear of the state. But here's where the myth got its fuel. The SS, Heinrich Himmler's elite guard, took this obsession to the absolute extreme, acting more like a breeding project than a military unit. Unlike the regular Joe, SS applicants were screened for specific Nordic features and had to prove their family tree all the way back to the year 1800. In Hitler's personal bodyguard unit, the standards were so insane that even a single dental filling or a slightly non-Nordic nose shape could get you rejected. Himmler personally checked photos to make sure his racial elite looked the part. Since only about 15% of applicants actually made the cut, it created this enduring image that all Germans were expected to look like Vikings, even though that was never the reality for the general public. 2. Blitzkrieg. In the military world, the word blitzkrieg is legendary, but here's the catch. It was never an official part of the German military handbook or doctrine. In reality, it was a catchy, dramatic label used by foreign magazines, like Time, to describe the rapid and shocking collapse of Poland and France. German generals actually hated the term, calling it a media buzzword and preferring the professional term war of movement. Their tactical success didn't come from a secret blitz manual, but from the innovative use of new technology, like radios in every tank, coordinated dive bombers, and giving junior officers the freedom to make quick decisions without waiting for the high command. 3. Hitler's one testicle. You've probably heard the catchy wartime tune about Hitler only having one ball. It was legendary for British morale and mocking his masculinity. But the actual medical receipts are weak. Medical records from his 1923 prison exam in Landsberg noted an undescended right testicle, a common condition where it's there, just hasn't moved into the proper place. His childhood doctor, Eduard Bloch, and his later physicians all swore his anatomy was totally normal. 4. Nazi eugenics. The Nazis didn't just wake up one day and invent the idea of purifying the gene pool. In the early 20th century, eugenics was a mainstream global trend, supported by intellectuals worldwide. Programs in the US and Britain promoted very similar ideas of selective breeding, and by 1945, about 60,000 people had been forcibly sterilized in the United States alone. The Nazi sterilization laws of 1933 weren't created in a vacuum. They were actually heavily influenced by California's sterilization laws. American foundations even funded some of the early German researchers, who later became key players in Nazi racial science. It's a dark reminder that these pseudo-scientific ideas were discussed in prestigious universities across the globe, not just in Berlin. 5. Nazi soap. This is one of the most horrific rumors from the Holocaust era, and it's still widely believed today. The story goes that the Nazis mass-produced soap from the fat of murdered victims. Here's the reality check. While there were small-scale, gruesome experimental attempts at the Danzig Anatomical Institute to create a soap-like substance for cleaning laboratory tools, industrial mass production for public use never happened. The widely cited RIF soap bars were actually standard industrial products. The letters stood for a government agency for fat supply. However, terrified people at the time misread the I as a J and believed it stood for pure Jewish fat. Global Holocaust museums like Yad Vashem have confirmed this was a terrifying wartime myth, not a systematic factory program. 6. Racist Nazis. Allied propaganda often portrayed the Nazis as universally racist, hating every single person who wasn't German. In reality, their ideology was much more pragmatic. Their main focus was on Germanic purity and anti-Semitism. To win the war, they actually formed alliances with people of many different backgrounds. The German army included legions from India, the Middle East, and Central Asia. They even cultivated ties with Arab leaders who shared their hatred of British colonialism. While they firmly believed in German superiority, they didn't treat every non-white group with the same level of hostility as they did Jews or Slavic peoples. They even used U.S. segregation laws as propaganda to point out American hypocrisy. 7. Nazis were anti-Christian Allied films often portrayed the Nazis as godless heathens or occult worshippers. But the reality was more complex. 95% of Germans at the time were baptized Christians. Hitler grew up Catholic and promoted a concept called positive Christianity. This was a state-approved version of the faith that stripped away its Jewish roots and tried to redefine Jesus as an Aryan hero fighting against the establishment. While some high-ranking Nazis like Heinrich Himmler wanted to eventually replace Christianity with ancient Germanic paganism and Wotan worship, they knew they couldn't do it during the war without causing a massive rebellion among the deeply religious German population. 8. Hitler was partly Jewish. This rumor started in the 1920s to highlight Hitler's hypocrisy. The story claims his grandmother, Maria Schicklgruber, got pregnant while working for a wealthy Jewish family named Frankenberger in Graz. Plot twist: historical research shows Jewish people weren't even legally permitted to live in Graz during that time. Hitler was so paranoid about his lineage that he had his own lawyer secretly investigate his family tree to find any skeletons. While a 2010 DNA study of his living relatives found genetic markers often seen in North African and Ashkenazi groups, there is zero documented proof of a Jewish grandfather. It remains a theory fueled by a lack of records. 9. Nazis burned all books. The image of Nazis burning books is often remembered as a total attempt to destroy all literature in Germany, but the reality was more targeted. These were actually symbolic, one-time events organized by radical pro-Nazi student groups, not a direct order from the top government. They targeted specific works they felt were un-German, such as books by Jewish, socialist, or communist authors like Albert Einstein, Sigmund Freud, and Karl Marx. While it sent a terrifying and effective message about intellectual freedom, it wasn't a total ban on books. In fact, the German publishing industry continued to thrive under the regime, as long as authors played it safe and didn't challenge the party's political ideology or racial theories.